we're finally doing this. I feel like I've been waiting to meet you for so long.
I know, me too.
So thank you for coming.
Of course.
I realize that some of the Daddy Gang may not know that your legal name is Ashley and Halsey is a stage name.
Yeah.
What do the people closest to you call you?
Ash.
Ash.
Everyone calls me Ash. My son just started calling me Ash. I was like, you better get it together. I'm mommy to you, okay? It's like I'm gonna have to make him a shirt and make myself a shirt that says "Call me mommy." Like
I'm obsessed.
Because he's like, he goes Ash. I'm like, mm. He goes, well, I want to call you Ash. I'm like, well, you can't.
Well, you can't. I'm mother.
I know. I don't know how to explain it to him in a way that doesn't sound like so, like, psychotically, like, you have to respect me and give me this name. Like, there's no way to explain it. Like, he's like, why can't I call you Ash if everyone else does? I'm like, that's a great question.
No, it's
But
true.
I just don't like it.
But I also think it's like the rite of passage, like when you become a parent, you're like, give me at least like 10 years of calling me like mom and mommy. And
you're
then,
3.
Right.
You can call me Ash later. Like, it's like, it's so funny. Yeah, it's crazy.
Is it weird if anyone in your life would like refer to you as Halsey?
Some people do. Like, I think it's kind of interchangeable at this point. I like answer to it the same way as if it was my name. It feels the same in my body.
It does.
You know, like it feels like it's like it registers the same emotionally as if someone says Ash or Ashley.
Have you ever looked at it like it's an alter ego?
Recently, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't mean to when I started. It was just a name because my name's Ashley Frangipani, and like you can't be Frangipani. You know what I mean?
You have to say it in your New Jersey accent.
My name is Ashley Frangipani. So, you know, there was that wasn't happening. So it was just supposed to be like an easy like moniker.
Yeah.
And then, I would say like a couple years ago, I started having thoughts like that were like, oh, well, that's very Halsey, or like, well, I dress like this when I'm Ash, and then I dress like this when I'm Halsey. And then I kind of was like, whoa, when did I start differentiating between the two? Like, when did they become two separate things?
Was that freaky or no?
Kinda, yeah. Because I was kind of like, how did it happen?
What is the difference between Halsey and Ashley? Like, give us an example.
Well, you know what's funny is I think Ashley is like when I'm Ash, like I'm definitely way more, I think, masculine than when I'm Halsey. And I'm not really certain like where that kind of started to divert. You know what I mean? Like when I'm home, like I'm like a boy clothes, short hair, like not to like gender clothes, but like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm definitely kind of, I think that Ash is like less provocative. Like I'm very like chill. I'm very patient. You know what I mean? Like very like maternal. And then I feel like Halsey, a lot of people have this idea that I'm like really provocative and like, you know, I'm like always like yapping. I'm a big yapper. Halsey's a yapper. Ash is not so much a yapper.
Have you ever become like a little resentful of the persona that you've created?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I think that the part of the problem though is that like, you know, people just kind of decide who you are based on like when they got to know you. You know what I mean? Like I've been seeing a lot of that happening. Like every now and then, like I'll see like a comment under like a picture of like me and my partner, and someone's like, I thought she was dating blah blah blah, and it's like someone from like 6 years ago, and I'm like, oh, your update. And like I don't expect everyone to know everything about me that's going on at any given moment, but like they just locked in something from like a big press moment or like a time when I was like really on, or like they were reading about me a lot, and they were like, and that's who you are forever. And I'm like, whoa, it's been like 6 years. So much has happened.
That's like kind of a mindfuck mentally to be like, no, I've progressed and grown, but you guys see this persona that like was very there in your minds and it never grew. And I've like fully grown as a human being.
Totally.
And yet Halsey is just like almost like stuck in time for people, which I think a lot of celebrities or performers have that. Like, and everyone decides when they want to grow with a performer or not. Like, it's fucking confusing.
Yeah.
How would you describe your relationship to fame?
I'm kind of indifferent at this point. I used to be like, it used to be not that way. It used to be just torturous. You know what I mean? Like I will say like, it never really felt normal. It still doesn't. Like I've been doing this for like 11 years. You would think at this point that I would just be like, yeah, I'm famous. No, that is not how it is. I like still wake up every day and then like I wake up every day and I'm like, oh my God. It's more like I wake up every day and I'm like, what the fuck?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that I also like I've kept like a lot of really normal people around me. And you know what? Actually, that's the distinction. That's when the distinction started happening, was that when I started to become like a celebrity. Like the distinction between Halsey and Ashley, I think, is very much that like Ashley stayed the same. You know, we're like, when I'm out with my friends, like my best friend Erica, she's been my best friend since I was like 13. And she's like, she says to me like once a month or like a couple times a month, like we'll be out somewhere doing something and someone will be like, oh, can I have a picture? There's like a paparazzi, there's like whatever. And she'll be like, dude, I like just forget you're famous every day.
That's the best.
I just forget all the time. And she's like lived with me. She's been around for like every step of the journey. She's like backstage at the VMAs with me. And then like the next day she's like, I forget you're famous. I'm like, how you were at the VMAs yesterday. How did you forget? And she's like, you just are still so, you're exactly the same as you were. You know what I mean?
I do think like that's so important to have though, because at the end of the day, like all these people that are famous, you're famous for like something that you're really good at. Obviously, some people are just famous because they're famous, but like you are so talented and your talent has made you famous, of course. But with that, like you are just still a human being that like likes to sleep and likes to eat and likes to chill with friends. And so I think having those like friends around you must still make you feel like the person from New Jersey that was just growing up and like had a talent. I think that's helpful to have. When do you feel most like yourself? Like what would you be doing?
Well, I'm pretty boring. Okay. I didn't used to be. I got it out of my system. Okay. You know what I mean? Like I had like a couple years where I look back on and like cringe into like a black hole when I see those photos or like, but I'm also really grateful for them because I just like did it in a contained set of years. And then I'll never have to do it again. So like now I'm just boring. Like,
no, you're not boring, but I know what you're talking about. I think we all have that where we're like, what was I doing? Like what would you say you did that was cringe?
Oh my God. There's like so many pictures of me just like fucked up, like leaving a club, like paparazzi, like it's like 3 a.m. I'm like, what are you doing? But also I was like 22, you know what I mean? Exactly. So when I see that, I'm like gentle with myself about it. But like, or like times where I like, I don't know, there's stuff that's like maybe cringe, but also maybe part of me, I'm a little bit like, go off. Like, you know, or like I clapped back at someone or I like, you know, like I went off or something like that. And like I see that and I'm like, gosh, you were so angry and so confused and so like overwhelmed and like you had no one to help you. So I have like a lot of compassion for that version of me. But then there's also times where I'm like, girl, shut up. You know, I'm like, shut up.
No, I think that's like no matter if you're famous or not, like people can look back at old Facebook photos and be like, what was I up to?
Totally.
Like what was going on there, Alex? But then at the end of the day, you're like, well, I was fucking young. And like I was having, I think, a good time.
I mean, I didn't go to college, you know what I mean? So I didn't have like those years. And it's funny, the same, like, I feel like the same people who will pass judgment for like photos of me in like my 20s, or, like not even in my 20s, like at 20, you know, because I was 19 when I wrote my first album. And, you know, there's like pictures of me from that time and people are like, oh gosh, like, and I feel like there's this almost indication of like no class. And I'm like, what if I were at like a university and like these pictures were just like on Facebook or like whatever. And I was just like going, like, you would just consider that a natural part of me, like finding myself and like, you know, but because there's this extra set of expectations, I think there's like a separate judgment that's passed. And like, I try to like contextualize it that way and be like, girl, you would have been doing the same thing if you stayed in Jersey, if you went to Rutgers, you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
you may
it would have been worse actually.
Like, I was gonna say, if you went to Rutgers, you would have been like face up on a keg stand. Like you would have had pictures of you on the keg stand. Like it would have been similar, if not worse.
I know.
How do you choose what to keep private and what to put into your art and your music?
I don't know that I really choose.
Okay.
I think it kind of, I just like write what I'm feeling. There's a song on this album called Hurt Feelings and it's about my dad. I've written a song about my dad every single album and every single time, just when we get to the time where we're deciding the track list, I cut the song because I'm like, I can't do it. I'm too scared. And this time I didn't. and I put it on the album. And that was like a moment for me where I was like, okay, this is something I have kept private, but now I feel ready to like get out there, and I feel like I have a responsibility kind of.
Do you have a relationship with your father? Like, does he know this is going to be on the album?
He doesn't know it's going to be on the album. We have a pretty complicated relationship, which is like, you know, I don't think that's like groundbreaking. I feel like a lot of young women have complicated relationships with their fathers. I think for me especially, you know, I started making music when I was 18, and it kind of started to blow up when I was 19, and it just changed everything about our family's dynamic because I became the breadwinner, and I became kind of like, you know, in a way, like I became like the matriarch, patriarch of my family. And I think that, you know, for a man who like spent his whole life like working really hard to support his family, and then, you know, I kind of come in and I'm like still a kid to him, and I take that role. I imagine that's probably just like conflicting, you know, in like an existential level. Really, and it definitely showed up in our relationship. And so it's like affected it since,
I can imagine that was very confusing for both of you. Like also you coming in being like, I don't know what the fuck to do either. Like this is, and when you do look back, what is your earliest childhood memory that comes to mind?
It's so hard. I'm like one of those people that doesn't remember like a lot of their childhood. I had like a really hectic childhood. My parents were really young when they had me. They dropped out of college. They met at Fairleigh Dickinson in Jersey, and then they were like 19 or 20 when they got pregnant. They'd only known each other for like a couple months, and you know, they both dropped out and started their family with me. We moved all the time. Every year we moved. Like I wasn't out of school until like high school. I wasn't out of school longer than like 2 years. And I was always starting over in a new place. We were just trying to go where there was like cheaper apartments, better jobs. My parents working like multiple jobs, and like my experience felt so irrelevant to like what they were going through. You know what I mean? It was like I think that when I look back on my childhood, my experience was very much to just like not get in the way because of how hard it was. And like I failed at that miserably. I was getting in the way all of the time. You know what I mean? And then I feel like that has probably attributed to like why I am in like the line of work that I'm in, because it's like, you know, we're all looking to satisfy some sort of like, no, I don't want to say need for attention, because I feel like that's really derogatory, but like maybe like we're looking for our voice and our experience to matter, you know?
But don't you feel like even hearing you say that when you're like, I was always in the way, I'm like, yeah, but I feel like that's what kids are supposed to do.
Totally.
And like, I imagine you though, like under those circumstances of your parents constantly having to move, you were like hyper aware of just like, stay over here, like don't do anything, don't like get in the way, like I'm not that important right now. Do you remember like what you felt about when you would like view your parents' like romantic relationship?
My parents were like really like, I guess kind of volatile. Like they were either like super in love and like cuddled on the couch, like laid the fuck up, like, you know, going on dates, like obsessed with each other like kids, or they were like at each other's throats. There was like no in between. And you know, like I've actually never really talked about this before, but my household was like pretty my household was pretty volatile. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of like there was a lot of like aggression, you know what I mean? And aggression just like thrown in every direction, like, you know. And I think that it's so funny because it's so obvious that you witness that, you form that as your perception of not necessarily of what love is, but what's acceptable in love, you know, and then that you apply that. When I look on past relationships of mine, I'm like, okay, I'm like, literally this is 2 + 2 = 4. Like it's so simple, you know what I mean?
It's fucked.
Yeah.
You're
and
like,
then,
oh, that is why I went for this. But and it like seems so simple, but it's like not also.
Yeah.
Because you don't catch yourself immediately doing it. And then when it's like a pattern, then you're like, whoa.
I know. And then it's funny because you think you do the work and then like a different trauma sneaks up on you, where it's like, okay, so you're like, all right, I'm going to tolerate like violence or aggression or like whatever it is because I experienced it But now I'm going to unlearn that so it never happens again. And then you get into another relationship and you're like, this one's better because it's not like the last one. And then like a different thing sneaks in. You know what I mean? Where it's like the person's like putting you down, or they're like, I don't know, like gaslighting you, or like whatever. And you're like, is this a whole other thing?
Right.
This is a whole other thing. Is it all just my childhood again?
No, it's like, literally it's like whack-a-mole, because you're like, oh, maybe it's not like physical this time, but it's like emotional this time, but it's all under the same fucking umbrella.
Totally.
First of all, thank you for sharing that, because I feel like you're someone that like when you write in your songs, like it's so fucking powerful. And I think a lot of people connect to you on how real you are in your lyrics, especially this new album coming out. When I was listening to it, I was like, I feel like I need to pull over. Like this is like, it's very heavy and emotional. Yeah. And I feel for you, but I think a lot of people can sadly relate to what you're going through. When you were in those moments with your parents and it was volatile, like, were you someone that would just like be alone and not tell anyone? How would you like basically get through it?
I think I kind of coped in that way, or just like waited for it to be over. You know what I mean? Also, like, it changes hands when you're in a household like that. Like, it usually starts and it's like you can kind of feel it happening to your mom. And I'm the only daughter and the oldest.
Okay, wow.
So there was definitely a point where like the target kind of changed to me, and you feel, I think, really alone in that sort of situation. I definitely just mostly coped by writing. I've always been a writer like my whole life, and you know, I like used to keep journals and like keep diaries and stuff like that, and I read a lot, and I was someone who kind of like, I was into escapism for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like novels and like just putting myself into like other worlds that just felt like different than mine.
Yeah. Would you ever talk to your mom like about it, since she had?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I have. My mom and I are super close.
Okay.
Yeah. She's like, my mom is like my best friend. And, you know, we have talked about it, and like, I think there's a couple stages of it, right? Because then there's the first part where you have to be like, hey, why didn't you stand up for me? And then there's the second part where you have to be like, also, I forgive you. You were going through a lot. And then there's like the third part of it, which is like, there's still stuff you do today that pisses me the fuck off. But I understand why now, because, you know, you've been conditioned, you know what I mean, in a certain way. And like, you have to have just like so much grace and understanding. And like at a certain point, you have to just decide, what's forgivable, right? And some things are and some things aren't. Like, I don't stand by the thing with people where it's like, oh, like they're your parents, like whatever it is, it's not that serious. Like, you know, you have to just like make sure you keep the relationship. Like, I don't agree with that at all. But then at the same time, I also don't agree with the idea of like, we should punish our parents forever for what they did to us. It's like, some things you forgive, some you don't, and that's up to you to decide.
That's a good point. And it takes so much fucking time, because like the resentment, I feel like, goes in and out, like depending at where you're at in life. Like, you can be like, okay, we're feeling good now, and then like something like triggers you and reminds you of something they did when you were younger, and you're like, oh my fucking God, actually, we're not done with this conversation.
Totally.
There's more shit I just remembered. And it's like an endless cycle, but I agree. Like, it can't just be black and white where you forgive or it's like all perfect. Like, there's going to be conversations that keep having to happen.
Yeah.
I think also something interesting that you were talking about was like going to all these different schools. Like, when we are young, a huge part also of like what forms our personality and our tendencies is like our relationship with our friends and our peers. You going to new schools constantly, like how did you approach a new school?
I was definitely like, this is an opportunity. You know, I was always like, if there's something I want to try out or someone I want to be, like I can do it here because no one knows me.
Oh, interesting.
You know, like when I was growing up, I was like Ashley with a Y. I was like Ashley with 2 E's.
Oh.
There was like one school I was at for like a really short period of time where I was like, I'm Ashley, but everyone calls me Sky. It's like not true. I made that up. I was just like 9. And then like it was like years later, I was like in a bar in New York and someone came up to me and they were like, Sky. And I was like, what? And they were like, Sky. Like we went to school together. And I was like, bitch, I don't even remember being that person, which is ironic now because if you know anything about me, like as an artist, like you're like, that tracks. Right. Like you constantly look and seem and act like different, you know?
But that's kind of like fun and tough as a kid to be
Yeah.
you're constantly not having to have this like stable foundation around you of like, I went to the same fucking school from like kindergarten to 8th grade, so like we all knew each other's parents and we all knew each other's shit, which has its pros and cons, but like constantly moving, I feel like you can reinvent yourself, but you also, I feel like, aren't really seen